In front of me are different types of aftermarket wheels, some of which you know and some you've never heard of. But behind the flashy paint and cool colors, there's actually a whole lot more going on in the metal and why some are so expensive while others might be super cheap. But what's really the difference and what are some of the myths and facts when buying your aftermarket wheels? Well, I'm Alex Martini with 2 underscores on Instagram, and today's episode of Hey, don't mess up your car. We're talking about which wheels to buy and why they matter. All right, so first things first, we're not even gonna get into the fact that there is a type of wheel manufacturing called just gravity cast wheels. Gravity cast wheels have been around pretty much since the dawn of time, and it sounds exactly like what it is. You essentially pour in liquid hot magma into a mold, and then however the shape takes form is the wheel. Now, this is the cheapest way to make wheels, but there's pretty much nobody out there that does this anymore. Even when you look at the cheapest wheels out there, things like XXR and brands like that, they're still doing low pressure cast because most of the factories in China don't even have gravity cast capabilities for aftermarket wheels. Now, with that being said, that's like the bottom of the barrel. You're buying those wheels for probably like $300, $250 at that point. A lot of Steelies are like that, and you're not really gonna be talking about that. The next step though is a low pressure cast wheel, and that's kind of what we're looking at right here. A low pressure cast is exactly what it sounds like. Take gravity cast, add a little bit of pressure into the mold, and you get a low pressure cast wheel. A lot of times what you get with that is some more customization to how a wheel looks. You get a little bit more ability to go wider with the wheel, you can get some more design in the concavity, and overall that manufacturing process really started to move, I would say, in the late 60s, early 70s, and has continued to be a really standard process for most wheel manufacturers. Now here's the thing, not all low pressure cast wheels are the same. Some people use the very basic, lowest technology possible, and some use really nice new stuff. Now this is an Origin wheel, which looks like it's got absolutely beat to over its last 3 decades of life, which spoiler alert, it has. These are low pressure cast wheel. They're a little bit heavy, they're extremely front heavy, which is something that you do have to keep in mind when you're looking at some of these wheels. Not all wheels are the same. Pros of a low pressure cast wheel, they're almost always in stock, they're pretty affordable, they've been made for about forever. Big myths around low pressure casts is that just because they're cheap, they're garbage. That's usually not the case. A lot of your older one-piece Japanese wheels are almost all going to be low pressure casts unless they specifically state that they're forged. What you got in between forged and this one though is where a lot of companies have a tendency to be going. That, my friends, is rotary forging. Now, rotary forging is called 27,000 different things by 27,000 different brands. For Koenig, it's called Flowform. This is a stage wheel that also uses Flowform or rotary forging technology, and you might be asking yourself, why do wheels that use rotary forging not just call it rotary forged? Well, because all the way back in the day, there was one company that did it first. That company was known as TSW, or Tiger Sport Wheels. You knew them as that one brand that you saw in a Sears catalog in like 2008, and nowadays TSW really doesn't make that much for people like us. They still make wheels out there, they're still good stuff, they're just not as popular as they once was, but they're the first one to introduce what we would call rotary forging to a wheel. Let me explain in the simplest of ways. They go and they low pressure cast the face of the wheel in the mold so that you get that nice front end, and then they leave a big chunker about right here, and it's about yay tall, and then these rollers come down, very, very simple, and they go meow, and they push out the metal. Now the whole goal with this is that as you actually roll out the metal while it's really hot and it's spinning at 1 billion miles an hour, what you get is the grain structure within the metal gets nice and it gets flowy and it looks good, and on the inside everything's all organized. When everything's all organized, you get greater strength. You also get a barrel that's inherently thinner than something like a low pressure cast or gravity cast wheel, because it's only using the minimum amount of metal required to meet the load rating for the wheel. You following me? That's why they call it Flowform, that's why they call it rotary forged. But you can get wheels that are technically rotary forged and still a little bit heavy. So what I'm trying to say here is that if you're in the market and you're looking for Flowform wheels, rotary forged wheels, obviously it's really important to see that it is rotary forged, but then check the wheel weight. You should be able to see that there's a pretty drastic difference between something like a low pressure cast wheel of an 18 by 9.5 weighing 23 or 24 pounds and a rotary forged equivalent equivalent weighing 18 or 19 pounds. If you see that rotary forged wheel still weighing 23 pounds, they're probably just trying to get you with marketing. One of the biggest pros with a flow form wheel or a rotary forged wheel is that you do get weight reduction on this wheel. You also get the cost benefit of the fact that this is a one-piece wheel. It's not a fully forged wheel, which means a lot of the times you're saving a good chunk of change. A lot of the tech that's on certain rotary forged wheels too is something that you typically only get from a forged wheel or a multi-piece wheel, which is what we're talking about next. Now, this is the cool thing. Most of the time, you're gonna get a good deal with a rotary forged wheel, but always check the weight and always make sure it's doing what you're intended to do. When you're seeing wheels that are sometimes a little bit more expensive than others, try to figure out why. It could be marketing, or it could actually be the fact that something like, for instance, the stage wheel actually has some added features that other wheels do not. Forged wheels, on the other hand, seem to be coming on everything nowadays. They're coming from everywhere.
What did he say?
They are typically the next step up. They're more expensive than rotary forged, but they're still not as expensive as multi-piece wheels. Forged one-piece wheels essentially try to be the top of the line, because what you're doing is you're forging every element of the wheel. The face, the barrel, all of it is getting put through essentially a high amount of pressure in a press, and then it's cooled down, cut up, and spit out, and that's where you get a forged wheel. OEM wheels also come fully forged nowadays. This is the performance raise wheel that came off of the 2023 Nissan Z. Fully forged, which means you're getting all of those same materials. Now, we're talking about aftermarket wheels. We want you to buy aftermarket wheels from MARTIWORKS, but that doesn't go without saying that manufacturers are making some dope-ass OEM wheels these days. Biggest thing to look out for when you are thinking about buying a forged one-piece wheel, like, do you need it? As silly as that sounds, a lot of times forged one-piece wheels are very purpose specific. They're very function specific. They're meant for race cars. They're meant for people that are using and abusing their wheels. And they're meant for a case where they really don't think that those wheels are gonna get battered around. You typically would see a forged wheel for us on the racetrack, on an open circuit, on something like that where people are running laps at very high speed. I would even argue you'd see them in some wheel-to-wheel cases, but I've actually seen it more in time attack than anything else. Most people from a cost perspective are gonna stay with rotary forged wheels for almost everything. Why? Because when you're drifting and you run into a wall, rotary forged wheels are cheaper to replace. When you're going on track and you're wheel-to-wheel racing and you bend something, rotary forged wheels are easier to replace. But if you are shaving every pound you possibly can on a car, a lot of times forged wheels are going to be lighter, they're going to be a little bit stronger. Unfortunately, the replacement cost is a lot more, and a lot of times I usually don't recommend it unless it's a very specific application. Now, next up and finally, which is probably the one that gets all the love on the internet, are multi-piece wheels. It's exactly what it sounds like. You're looking at a wheel that is like a Lego Build-A-Bear of shit. And a lot of times, this is the market that most of the time people get very animated about, because they're very passionate about where a wheel is made, where the barrels are made, where the lips are made. Here's what I'll say. If you are buying a brand new three-piece wheel, I'm super happy for you. You're gonna love it. Most three-piece wheel assemblies, most three-piece hardware, most everything that has to do with a three-piece wheel are almost all made in like the same 2 or 3 factories. There's only a very few brands out there that are making their stuff in places nobody else is. You'll actually see it so much so that people will say that they get their lips from work, or they get their lips from Rays or something like that. That's pretty much the biggest bragging point that you have. This is my friend Steven's 3-piece rotiform wheel. It's an absolute banger. It's a beautiful wheel. It's heavy as sin, but it looks dope. With 3-piece wheels, here's what you get. You can make it in any wonky size that you want. You can color everything any possible color you want. It's practically like the result if you had access to ChatGPT to design a wheel for you. There are so many crazy things you can do with 3-piece wheels. You can make it in any size, any finish, half and half hardware. You can really do anything. The biggest pro to this is that you do have the ultimate customization. So if you're running a wide body setup, 3-piece wheels are gonna fit a whole hell of a lot easier than trying to find a rotary forged wheel that's 18 by 10.5 -35. Spoiler alert, those don't exist, all right? So the reason I'm showing you this though is because this is a very important part of the process, which is sometimes often overlooked when people are trying to buy secondhand three-piece wheels. A lot of times people buy secondhand multi-piece wheels because they're the same price as rotary forged wheels. The problem is they've been used and tossed around for decades. I'm talking literally decades. VSKFs have been tossed around, and you just don't want to do that unless you know what you're getting into. Top things to look for if you are looking to buy secondhand multi-piece wheels, which we recommend if you're trying to save some money though. Check the barrels, check the lips, check the hardware. A lot of times those things have been replaced over the years, and even if the original work wheel came with work barrels, the odds of you finding those VSKFs for $900 having the same work barrels it's not happening. That's just not a thing. Multi-piece wheels, in my opinion, are awesome. I've had them a million times. I will absolutely say they're super cool to own, and you should own them. If you've got a show car, you got something fun, definitely a fun way to go. And they're hard to beat, but they do cost as much as a car sometimes. And that, my friends, can be a huge deterrent for people wanting to get this. The good news is you don't have to spend $6,000, $5,000 on a set of multi-piece wheels, and you don't have to spend $300 either. The way that we try to do things at MARTIWORKS is we really just try to be honest with you about what you're getting. If you want to get a three-piece wheel and you want to get something that has a lot of heritage, we can help you, because not all three-piece wheel brands out there are going to have that. You might be looking for something that's rotary forged or more on a budget, but you don't really know where to start. We can help you because we've seen it all. We've kind of done all of the talks with all of the factories. We know where all of these wheels are made. We know which ones have the greatest margins and which ones don't. We know which ones brands are trying to push because the vendors are making more money, and which ones they're not pushing because they're not making any money. And at the end of the day, the way that we're doing this is we're just gonna tell you if a product is shit or if a product is not, because that's the difference. You can either buy from the big corporate companies, or you can buy from the homies that just want you to have a fun time and mod your car at MARTIWORKS, which if that's something that you're interested in, you can check the website below. And if you have any questions on aftermarket wheels, drop a comment, shoot us a message on Instagram, and of course, don't forget to subscribe. I'm Alex. We will see you next time. Adios.